Welcome to the Growth Lab podcast, the only B2B sales podcast with proven strategies, tools, and tactics for selling into construction, FM, and property management. I'm your host, Matt Harris, the creator behind the Growth Lab. So these were government tenders, were they, on the portal contracts, like the small business government tenders?
Yeah.
How was that process? Like, how, from someone who was, focused on domestic to then like jumping into the deep end and going for tenders, like what was that experience like?
Well, it was daunting, as you might expect, having not for domestics, very little paperwork to do. And then to get through the formal tender process, there's first the SQ and then the ITA to follow, the invitation to tender, ITT, sorry. That was quite a lot of documentation and quite a lot of writing. I'm not a natural writer. It's and a bit of it is creative writing as well. But I managed to, actually, the first one I did for a local authority, I scored 100%. And that was to their shock and to mine. I was more shocked with.
All right.
Oh, I have. So I got that, and then I got quickly invited to another one, and then I had to do presentations at that one. So that was a little bit nerve-wracking as well, because that's not something that I was used to doing. Essentially, just step changes in different tasks to give confidence is how I worked it out with the tenders. Every time you do one, the first time it's difficult. The next time it's not as difficult. So I just went with that. There was a lot of documentation that I wasn't used to. But fortunately, I'd already gotten myself ISO 9001 accredited. So that ticked a lot of boxes. And I hadn't by then, but I did very quickly go for 14,001 and 45,001 as well. So again, that made subsequent tenders a lot easier to get because it takes a lot of the writing out.
So you went quite paper heavy early doors, because that's a lot of form filling, isn't it, really?
It's a lot of form filling. But because I'd already come from a place of documenting everything I did anyway, it wasn't too bad. I had some tweaking to do, but I had everything there because that's how I ran the business. So for me, the step to get 9001 wasn't massive. It was just reorganizing my paperwork in accordance with the standard rather than having to write everything. And what I didn't do, and I wouldn't recommend people to do, is to buy one off the shelf because you're never going to use it. I've written all of my own standards, and we've also got 22301, which is a really important one, I believe. So I've written them all, every word from every scratch, but that's how our business runs. Okay. So it's not just in namesake. We actually do those things. So I find that if you do write it yourself, you've got a really good understanding of your business, which can then, because you need those skills, you need to know about your business to be able to win the tenders, to be able to write the tenders, because no one's going to write as good as you.
So have you like developed templates off the back of that you can kind of transfer to tenders going forward? Because I'm guessing the tender process is relatively formulaic. They follow a certain structure. So have you, over time, as you've applied for more tenders, have you developed a template system? So you're like, okay, I don't need to do that much work. I need to finesse it around the edges, but ultimately a bit of a drag and drop exercise.
Pretty much. But what I found, again, I'm not a trained writer. I've taught myself. I find that every sector is different. So you could have the same question, what you think it's asking you the same things, but in a different sector, it's a totally different answer. So yes, I've kind of got formulaic answers, but I've got that same answer for all the different sectors that we operate in. So it's ever evolving. I mean, some sectors we've not managed to break through yet, but it's a matter of time because of every rejection. Go back and ask for your feedback. You can learn more, and you just keep tweaking your offering, and you get there eventually.
So you must have quite a hot document management system as well, right? With all these templates and processes.
There's quite a lot, and we now have someone in the office that manages that for me because I can't keep up with all of that stuff now as well. I still write everything, although I have used bid writers in the past. Some I've found to be okay, others I've found not so okay. I've kissed a lot of frogs to get to the good tender writers that I've got on speed dial now, but I've also written enough tenders and worked with the good tender writers, bid writers, to not need them all the time now, because it can be quite expensive. So when you're trying to grow, typically to get a good bid writer for a tender that's valued at about 100 to 150k per annum over the 5, and then times that by 3 to 5 years, whatever it is, you're looking at about 6 to 7k per bid.
Oh wow!
Just for the tender support. And this is only my experience, and again, I don't do it like everyone else does. But it takes me a good month to do a really good bid for a big tender, what I would consider a decent sized tender. You look at about the $500,000 mark. It's about a month by the time you've done site visits, and then you've priced it and you've written it and you've tweaked it and you've finessed it. So it's a big commitment. So of my time plus a bid writer's time gets very expensive very quickly.
And how many of those sorts of tenders would you go for in a year? Do you set a target? This year we're going to go for X number of tenders, or do you pick on an ad hoc basis when a good tender comes up, only then, and it meets certain criteria, only then you'll go for it?
So that's a really good question. Because we only pivoted in 2019, I think I went for a further 2 subsequent to the first 2 that I won. I didn't win those. And then that's not true. I did win one. So I won 3 out of 4. So that's not true. But then the next one was starting in 2020. Surprise, surprise. We all know what happened. So I actually had to mobilize during COVID lockdown. And the client had actually forgotten that we were mobilizing, because everyone else had furloughed and they were just thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do? But then I just got on and mobilized it. I just did it anyway. So that was good. But then a couple of things happened during that period was, one, a lot of the organizations weren't posting contracts up for tender because their staff weren't working. They're not going to change from one supplier to another in that sort of circumstance. And we also had the Brexit where all the portals changed. During that period, I went for anything that came up and figured I will just practice. I'll use this as a practice. So anything and everything that came up, whether it was in my sector or not my sector, I just honed my skills. And I did spend a lot of money, because I thought, well, now's the time to learn. I found a good bid writer, so I worked with them and learned everything I could from them as well. But actually, I have found throughout this whole time with my business is that if I put the effort in, I might not win then, but it'll come good later on. So I learned skills which enabled us to then get into the blue light sectors.
Okay.
And it wasn't about necessarily my cleaning skills or knowledge within the business, because that's pretty tight anyway. It was more about writing to win. During COVID, we also secured our first fire service contract. So that was a win, but on the back of a few losses. But if you're not earning...
Yeah, but you were getting the reps in,
I looked at it.
Yeah, you were getting the reps in, right? The practice and building that knowledge and the experience, which, like you said, obviously pays off in the long run. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, make sure you hit that follow button on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or hit that subscribe button on YouTube to get early access to the next episode. And if you want weekly B2B sales tips sent directly to your inbox, make sure you subscribe to the Growth Lab newsletter via the link in the episode description. Until next time, stay grinding.